Hey, what's going on, guys? This is gonna be a quick video, but something that's always been funny to me is right-wing outrage over leftist talking points in American comic books. Because despite what the internet will have you believe, or like to have you believe, this is far from anything new. Because if you just take a look through history, which I know sounds daunting, but comics as we know them in the West have only really been around for about 100 years, which is barely even a drop in the bucket if you consider recorded history as we know it. Every generation, there is a negative conservative reaction to comics, specifically superhero comics, which have historically leaned left in their politics. And that's putting it mildly in some cases. And there's about a dozen examples of this, and I've spoken about this in the past already, but if you look at, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Hard Traveling Heroes, or really just about anything by Dennis O'Neil, there is a leftist slant to a lot of his writing, which, to be fair, is sometimes hit or miss. Sometimes you end up with he and Dick Giordano's Wonder Woman, which is awful, even by their admission. But the sentiment behind what they were going for was to make Diana more of a socially progressive and grounded figure, which, again, he would do with Hard Traveling Heroes, which, while clunky at times, was Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil's attempt at bringing DC superheroes back to that champion of the oppressed type mission statement that the company was founded on, with Superman and being a reaction to the social woes of the day. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns literally frames Republican President Ronald Reagan as a cartoon supervillain. In fact, many would argue that he's the villain of the book. And not even to mention Marvel throughout the 60s and 70s and 80s. Claremont's X-Men alone, that's the obvious one. After Dave Cockrum and Lynn Wein just reinvent that team from the ground up with giant-size X-Men #1 and made them a lot more diverse, Claremont just took that ball and ran with it, which, by the way, again, contrary to a lot of revisionist history, was not this unanimously loved and adored comic book series. It was controversial for the time. And if you go back and you read some of those issues and read some of those letters pages, it's not hard to see why. Because when the X-Men aren't in space doing space opera stuff, or when Claremont's not just ripping off popular 80s and 70s movies, he does get very preachy with his political message, and, those comics can get aggressively politically left-leaning. And then there's Anna Senti and her and Romita Jr.'s run on Daredevil. That's another major example. Now, I haven't read it myself yet, personally. I have 2 Epic collections that collect the beginning of their run, but I haven't cracked them open yet. But that run, from reputation, both online and from my friends who've read through it, again, it's a very leftist book. And apparently, according to Matt Draper, who makes some really cool video essays on comics, cited from Marvel editors that there were letters filled with people calling Ann Nesenti, a commie bitch, and calling for her to be taken off the book. And those are just the big ticket items. I think people have completely memory holed that there were conservative Christian organizations in America literally orchestrating book burning events for comics because they were considered to be radicalizing the youth of America, leading to a decay of morals in our country. Which, by the way, if that phrase sounds familiar, just keep in mind what I keep saying: the more things change, the more they stay the same. And those book burning events coincided directly with McCarthy and Richard Nixon's Red Scare witch hunts throughout the 50s and 60s, where conservative American politicians were targeting socially progressive activists and politicians who were labeled as communist and un-American, and as a result were blacklisted from their industries. In fact, EC Comics, formerly Entertainment Comics but later rebranded to Education Comics, took the full brunt of this. And there's a really cool book called Comic Book Nation by Bradford W. Wright that goes into a lot more detail about it. And, I'll never not recommend checking that book out, especially if you like comics and the history of comic books. Now, granted, all those examples that I've listed are from 40 plus years ago, but even in recent history, like the past 20 or so years, I think people forgot how the world of American comics reacted to the Bush presidency. George W. Bush was elected President of the United States of America, and DC Comics immediately followed up with President Lex. And meanwhile, Marvel jump-started the Ultimate Universe, and George W. Bush, throughout that line, is just the dippiest of dipshits who, after nearly being assassinated by Magneto, because he tried to assassinate Magneto with giant metal robots, jumpstarts the Ultimates, which is, for all intents and purposes, Team America, but with the Avengers. And that entire book is just a satirical critique of the Bush and Cheney administration. There's also a book called Black Summer that nobody talks about anymore by Warren Ellis and Juan Jose Rip, where a superhero literally assassinates George Bush on grounds that he was behind 9/11 in order to justify a forever war in the Middle East just for the sake of private profit. Granted, there wasn't a lot of political pushback against these books when they were coming out, primarily because Bush 2.0 was just not a popular president. Between 9/11, the seemingly endless war on terror, the ethical embarrassment of Guantanamo Bay before the world stage, and on top of that, the death toll of over 4 million people as a result of the U.S. invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, not even mentioning the state that the American economy his administration was leaving the U.S. in. So in that particular case, it wasn't just a leftist thing. I don't think anybody across the political spectrum had a lot of love or admiration for Bush or Cheney. But there was quite a bit of leftist outrage over Bush and the Republican Party and conservatives in that era in comics, as well as a lot of other mediums, and you couldn't really escape it. But again, none of this is new. None of these leftist, progressive, or anti-conservative, anti-nationalist talking points and ideals and power fantasies are new in comics. The only thing that's really changed between then and now, and I've been saying this for years, is the internet. Social media just has a way of making sentiments that were already present seem bigger, louder, and more pronounced and more in your face, so the right-wing outrage feels louder, despite having always been present, as is the leftist response in kind, resulting in a back and forth that, again, feels louder and more violent, but again, it's always been like this. It's just that we have the internet now, and social media is a beast that farms and feeds off of rage bait. But again, back to the point, no, comics did not go woke. They always have been. And like I said, there's always been a right-wing push against them for it. Now, all that said, before anyone hops into the comment section like, "You're fucking SJW, faggot, nigger, liberal, cuck, indoctrinating motherfucker," because I know for a fact that people will just jump in the comment section and start attacking and projecting off seeing the video title and not actually having watched said video. This is not me making a case for leftism or liberalism or progressivism or making a case against conservatism or even centrism. All that I'm addressing is how comic books have historically leaned left, resulting in right-wing outrage. That was the point of the video, just in case any of my sentiment was lost in translation. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace and happy reading. Take care.